The Hare and the Tortoise. In a bright sunlit meadow, nestled between tall whispering trees and fields full of daisies, there lived a proud hare named Henry. Henry was known far and wide as the fastest animal in the entire forest. With long legs and a nose that twitched with excitement, he loved to race across the hills just to feel the wind rush past his ears. "Who can beat me?" Henry would shout, hopping in circles. "No one! I'm the quickest of them all. Even the birds in the sky can't match my speed." The forest animals were used to Henry's loud bragging. Squirrels rolled their eyes, owls shook their heads, and raccoons covered their ears. But one day, something unexpected happened. While Henry was bouncing around the glade, boasting once again about his unbeatable speed, a quiet voice rose from beneath a mushroom patch. "I believe I can beat you," said the voice gently. Everyone turned in surprise. It was Tilda, the tortoise. Her shell was covered in moss and flowers, and her eyes were calm like the morning dew. Henry laughed so hard he rolled onto his back. "You? Beat me? With legs that barely move and a shell heavier than a boulder?" Tilda didn't flinch. "Yes, because while you race with your legs, I race with my heart." The meadow fell silent. The animals whispered in amazement. "Let's have a race then," Henry grinned. "Tomorrow morning, by the big oak tree. We'll run to the riverbend rock and back. That'll show everyone who the real champion is." Tilda nodded slowly. "I'll be there." As the sun began to set and the animals returned to their nests, word of the great race spread through the forest like fire through dry leaves. Little did they know, this wouldn't be just any race. It would be one the forest would remember forever. As dawn peeked over the treetops, golden light spilled across the forest floor. Birds chirped cheerfully, squirrels scurried with excitement, and even the sleepy owls stayed awake to witness what was now being called the Great Forest Race. Creatures from near and far gathered by the big oak tree, chattering eagerly. A wise old badger named Professor Pine was chosen as the official announcer and referee. Wearing tiny spectacles and a bow tie made of dandelions, he cleared his throat with great importance. "Today," he began, "we witness not just a contest of speed, but of spirit. On one side, we have Henry the Hare, fast, strong, and full of pride. And on the other, we welcome Tilda the Tortoise, steady, brave, and full of heart." The crowd cheered, though some animals whispered to each other, "It's not fair. Poor Tilda doesn't stand a chance." Tilda stood quietly, gazing at the path ahead. Her shell was polished with morning dew, and she wore a crown of tiny purple wildflowers. She didn't worry about the whispers. She knew who she was. Henry bounced beside her, stretching his long legs, grinning from ear to ear. "Don't blink or you'll miss me," he chuckled. "Try not to get lost." Just then, a small voice called out from the crowd. "Go, Tilda!" It was Pip, a baby chipmunk with eyes full of hope. "You can do it." Tilda smiled kindly and gave a little nod. Professor Pine raised a golden leaf in the air. "On your marks." The crowd held their breath. "Get set!" A hush fell across the forest. "Go!" Henry dashed forward in a blur of fur and laughter. Dust swirled behind him as he zipped past bushes and leapt over fallen logs. The forest roared in amazement. Tilda took her first step, one slow, thoughtful step, then another and another. She didn't rush, she didn't stop. Her eyes stayed fixed on the path, and her heart beat with quiet courage. Behind her, the animals watched in silence. And deep in the trees, the wind whispered, as if the forest itself was cheering her on. Henry the Hare raced through the forest trail like a streak of lightning. Leaves spun into the air behind him as he zipped between trees, barely touching the ground. "This is too easy," he laughed, bouncing ahead with glee. "I could win this race hopping backwards." Soon he passed a bubbling brook where dragonflies danced above the water. He paused for a moment to admire his reflection. "Still handsome," he winked, "still fast, and still very far ahead." Meanwhile, not far behind, though at a much slower pace, Tilda the Tortoise continued her walk with quiet strength. She hummed a soft tune as she went, noticing the little things others usually missed. A family of ants building a bridge from twigs, a snail sliding along a petal, and a butterfly perched on a wild mushroom. Suddenly, the forest path opened into a magical grove, glowing with gentle light. It was known as Whispering Hollow, a place where the trees spoke in riddles and ancient creatures watched from the shadows. As Henry zoomed past the hollow's edge, a voice called out from the trees, "Quick feet may trip on pride." But Henry didn't slow down. "I don't need advice from old tree roots," he snorted. Back at the entrance of the grove, Tilda approached carefully. A shimmering owl named Alwyn swooped down and perched on a low branch. "Slow traveler," Alwyn said with a wise tilt of his head. "This path tests more than speed. Will you listen to the forest?" Tilda nodded. "I always listen." With a flap of his wings, Alwyn summoned tiny lantern bugs that floated in front of her, gently lighting the way. As she followed them, she heard songs of encouragement from the breeze and rustling leaves that seemed to say, "Keep going, don't stop." Further ahead, Henry came to a clearing filled with tall grass and sweet-smelling clover. His ears twitched. "Maybe I should take a quick break, just a short one." Tilda's probably still at the starting line. He flopped down in the soft grass, yawned, and stretched his legs. "I'll nap for just a minute," he said sleepily. "No way she'll catch up." And with that, Henry the Hare closed his eyes. In the distance, Tilda's steady footsteps continued. Slow, soft, but never stopping. The glowing lantern bugs danced around Tilda, gently guiding her deeper into the mystical part of the forest. The trees here were taller, older, and their trunks were covered in glowing runes that shimmered like stars. As she moved forward, the path became tricky. Twisted roots rose from the ground like puzzles, and strange winds whispered from all directions. But Tilda didn't hesitate. She stepped over each obstacle with care and patience. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the woods. A cluster of stones ahead began to shift, revealing a large moss-covered creature with glowing green eyes. It was Bramble, the gentle forest guardian. "Halt, little one," Bramble boomed. "To pass this way, you must answer a question of the heart." Tilda blinked slowly. "I'll do my best." Bramble leaned down, his rocky beard brushing the ground. "Why do you race, though your legs are slow and the chance of victory seems impossible?" Tilda took a deep breath. "Because it's not about winning. It's about trying, about finishing what I start." Bramble smiled, a deep, earth-rumbling smile. "That is the right answer." He stepped aside, and the path ahead cleared, glowing faintly under her feet. Back in the sunny meadow, Henry still slept, curled like a ball in the tall clover. Bees buzzed past him, and a family of field mice tiptoed by, giggling. He twitched in his sleep, dreaming of victory parades and shiny trophies. Tilda continued on, now reaching a narrow bridge made of twisted vines. Below it, a stream of sparkling water flowed, filled with silver fish that leapt through the air like arrows of light. She stepped carefully, the bridge creaking under her weight, but her focus never wavered. On the other side, a bluebird flew to her shoulder. "You're almost halfway," the bird chirped kindly. "The riverbend rock is just beyond the next hill." Tilda nodded. "Thank you. I will keep going." Meanwhile, far behind, the animals in the crowd started whispering. "Where's Henry? Has Tilda given up? Who's winning?" But in the woods, the truth was clear. Tilda moved steadily onward, while Henry slept soundly, unaware that the race was changing. The morning sun had climbed high into the sky, casting long shadows through the forest canopy. Birds soared above, whispering news across the treetops. Tilda is still moving. The tortoise hasn't stopped. At the edge of Riverbend Rock, a massive stone shaped like a sleeping bear, Tilda paused for a sip of cool water from the stream. She stretched her legs, smiled at the reflection of her flower crown, and resumed her quiet pace. Unseen behind a curtain of tall ferns, a group of forest children, raccoons, squirrels, and a shy baby fox, watched in awe. One of them whispered, "She's not fast, but she's so brave." "She's already halfway," said another. Just then, the ground trembled gently, not from thunder, but from Henry's snoring. High in a willow tree above the clearing, Professor Pine adjusted his dandelion bow tie and squinted through a wooden telescope. "Oh, my whiskers," he gasped. "She's ahead!" Gasps and excited chatter rippled through the forest crowd. "Is the hare still asleep? How can this be? Look at her go." Miles back, Henry finally stirred. A butterfly had landed on his nose, tickling it until he sneezed himself awake. "Huh, what time is it?" he muttered, blinking at the sky. He leapt up, stretched his legs, and laughed. "She's probably still crawling through the hollow." But as he bounded over the hill, expecting to see her in the distance behind him, he saw nothing. No Tilda. No sign of her at all. He frowned. Wait, what? Panicked, Henry zoomed ahead, his paws kicking up clouds of dust. He raced past the whispering trees, past the bubbling stream, and over the vine bridge, but no Tortoise in sight. Back at Riverbend Rock, Tilda was already crossing a sunny field filled with glowing sunflowers. A gentle wind pushed at her shell like a soft hand, encouraging her forward. At the edge of the field, a family of deer offered her a few forest berries for energy. "Keep going, Miss Tilda," said the youngest fawn. "You're doing wonderfully." Tilda's eyes sparkled. "Thank you. I won't stop now." She wasn't running, she wasn't rushing, but she was further than she had ever been. And for the first time, a quiet sense of hope settled in her heart. Far behind, Henry pushed himself harder. "No, no, no," he shouted. "She can't be ahead. I'm the fastest." But the trees rustled with laughter. The race had changed, and now so had Henry's expression. The grin was gone. The certainty cracked. Tilda didn't look back. She never had. She only looked ahead, step by steady step. The golden field faded into a quiet glade where tall trees stood like silent guardians. Their leaves shimmered silver, and a soft wind hummed a lullaby only the oldest creatures could understand. Tilda stepped gently into the clearing. A spiral of glowing feathers floated down from the sky. From the center of the trees emerged a tall, graceful owl, cloaked in moonlight. "You've come far, slow walker," the owl said, her eyes glowing like twin stars. Tilda nodded. "I promised I would finish." "Then listen," said the owl. "The wind carries a warning. The hare has awakened, and he is racing like fire." Tilda looked toward the far hills. She didn't tremble. "Let him run. I will walk." The owl bowed her head. "And that is why you are strong." Meanwhile, Henry tore across the landscape, his fur slicked with sweat, eyes darting wildly as he searched for any sign of her. "This isn't right," he growled. "Where is she hiding?" He raced over the stream, leapt through the sunflower field, and skidded to a stop near Riverbend Rock. "She's ahead of me?" His voice cracked. "That can't be." For the first time in his life, Henry felt something unfamiliar creeping into his chest. Doubt. Back in the silver glade, Tilda was making her way across the soft moss. A breeze tugged at her shell gently, and she smiled. She could feel it. The finish line was near. Not close, but near enough to dream about. As she approached the final rise, a small squirrel rushed toward her with a pine cone in his paws. "Miss Tilda, you're doing it! You're leading the race!" "I'm just moving forward," she replied kindly. The animals gathered in the trees began to murmur. Word was spreading like wildfire. The tortoise might win. Henry, hearing distant cheers, pushed his legs faster than ever, but his breaths were now ragged. His steps, once smooth, had grown clumsy. He stumbled, slid on a patch of wet leaves, and tumbled into a bush. He stood up, scratched and covered in brambles. For the first time, he stopped. Not because he chose to rest, but because he realized he wasn't prepared to lose. "How did this happen?" he whispered. "I was the fastest." At the crest of the last hill, Tilda paused to look at the sky. The sun was beginning to dip, painting the clouds in shades of pink and lavender. She could hear cheers in the distance, but she didn't rush. She just placed one foot in front of the other, steady and true. And at that moment, every creature watching felt it. This wasn't just a race anymore. It was a lesson. The forest was now fully alive. From mountaintop nests to meadow hollows, creatures great and small leaned in, breathless. The ground quivered with energy, not from storms, but from a story unfolding right before their eyes. Tilda had reached the last stretch of the path, a winding trail between glowing firefly lanterns that marked the way to the finish line beneath the old oak tree. Her feet ached, and her shell felt heavy, but her spirit remained light. Each step she took sent ripples of admiration through the crowd. Owls flapped silently overhead. Tiny mice danced near her shadow. Even the wind hushed, as if honoring her quiet strength. Meanwhile, Henry stood at the edge of the clearing, frozen. He could see her now, far ahead, the slowest animal he'd ever known, leading, winning. His chest heaved. "How is this possible?" he muttered, stunned. Then, from the side of the path, a young chipmunk called out, "You still have time, Henry. You're fast. Go." The words pierced him. He looked down at his own feet, then up at the finish line. and something shifted. Not just fear of losing, but confusion, regret, a strange, new feeling he didn't quite understand. He burst forward. Tilda could hear the thundering of paws behind her. Closer now, louder. But she didn't turn. She never had. She just kept going. One foot, then the next. Behind her, Henry tore through the path like lightning unchained. Trees blurred, grass bent beneath his speed. And yet, something felt different. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't proud. He was chasing something. But it no longer felt like victory. Up ahead, the great oak tree came into view. Beneath it, the woodland elders waited with silken banners and wreaths of woven ivy. Cheers echoed through the woods. "Go, Tilda! She's almost there!" Henry was gaining fast. The finish line was just around the bend. Tilda heard the cheers and the pounding behind her, and for a split second, her heart fluttered. But she breathed in and let it go. She didn't panic. She didn't run. She walked, firm, faithful, forward. The finish line shimmered beneath the golden glow of the setting sun. Tiny bells chimed in the breeze, and ribbons danced on the branches of the mighty oak. Every eye in the forest was fixed on the path, waiting. Tilda was nearly there. Her steps were slow, steady, deliberate. Each movement carried the weight of her journey, yet also the grace of her purpose. She did not glance back, not once. Henry, only heartbeats behind, surged forward. His muscles ached, but adrenaline pushed him harder. The world narrowed. All he could see was the prize, just beyond the tortoise's reach. The crowd gasped. "Tilda's almost there!" Henry's catching up. A fox on a nearby stump whispered, "He'll pass her any second now." And he could have. He was close enough to see the edge of her shell, close enough to feel the dust she stirred with her tiny feet. One leap, just one, and he'd win. But something inside him didn't leap. He looked at her, really looked. The tortoise, the slowest creature he knew, had walked this entire path without shortcuts, without rest, without fear. She hadn't mocked, she hadn't doubted, she hadn't stopped. And yet, here she was, steps away from victory. Henry's pause slowed. His breath trembled. He remembered his nap, his confidence, his pride. He remembered laughing when she agreed to race, but he didn't feel like laughing now. He felt humbled. Just behind Tilda, he stopped running. The forest fell silent. Tilda didn't know he was there. She simply crossed the finish line, one quiet step at a time. The moment her foot touched the final stone, a cheer erupted that echoed across the treetops and shook the earth with joy. Animals whistled, clapped, howled, and chirped. Tilda blinked, surprised. Had she truly done it? She turned slowly, and there was Henry, just a few steps behind her, standing still. Their eyes met. He wasn't angry. He wasn't smug. He smiled. A soft, tired, genuine smile. "You won, Tilda," he said quietly, "and you deserved it." The celebration echoed through the clearing like a song written by the wind. Birds swooped in joyful spirals, and squirrels danced from branch to branch, tossing flower petals onto Tilda's shell. Even the trees seemed to sway in quiet applause. But amid the noise, the two racers stood side by side, beneath the old oak, not speaking right away. Tilda looked up at Henry, her eyes full of something gentle. "You didn't need to stop." "I did," he replied, voice soft, "because I realized something. It wasn't just about who was faster. It was about who didn't give up." She smiled. "Speed fades. Steady never stops." Henry nodded. "And pride. It blurs your eyes, makes you think winning is about the end. But it's really about how you get there." The woodland elders approached, placing a wreath of wildflowers around Tilda's neck. She bowed her head humbly as cheers erupted again. But she raised a foot and said, "Can I speak?" The forest quieted. "I didn't win because I'm clever," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I didn't win because I'm better. I won because I kept going, even when I was behind, even when it felt impossible." She turned to Henry. "And I didn't race to beat someone. I raced to prove something to myself." Henry looked down, then smiled again. "And you did." From that day forward, something in the forest changed. Animals no longer laughed at the slow ones. They no longer believed speed was the only strength. They began to cheer for those who kept moving. They began to honor persistence over pride. Henry, once the symbol of swiftness, started walking the trails every morning, not to race, but to listen, to notice, to appreciate. He often walked beside Tilda. Sometimes, neither of them spoke. But in that silence lived something new: respect. Seasons passed, and the story of the tortoise and the hare became legend in the forest. It wasn't just about a race anymore. It was about something deeper, something that touched every heart, no matter how fast or slow. Tilda and Henry's friendship grew stronger with each passing day. They became a pair who understood that sometimes speed and strength weren't the answers. Patience and perseverance carried a power all their own. One bright morning, as Tilda slowly made her way through the path near the edge of the forest, she found Henry waiting for her by the oak tree. His once confident posture had softened, but in a good way. There was a gentleness to him now, one that came from knowing the true meaning of strength. "Tilda," Henry said, "I've been thinking, maybe there's a race we can run together." She tilted her head curiously. "Together?" "Yes," he replied, his eyes sparkling. "Not to see who's faster, but to see how far we can go together, how much we can learn from each other." Tilda smiled warmly. "That sounds like the best race of all." And so, they began to race, not against each other, but alongside each other, every day, one step at a time, slow and steady. Sometimes Henry would pause to listen to the sounds of the forest, and sometimes Tilda would stop to admire the way the sun filtered through the trees. There was no finish line. There was only the journey. The animals who watched them realized that true victory wasn't found in crossing a line first, but in the steps they took together, in the kindness, patience, and understanding they shared, in the wisdom of knowing that sometimes the most important thing wasn't winning, it was the friends we make along the way. And so, in the heart of the forest, the legend of the tortoise and the hare lived on, not just as a story of a race, but as a tale of transformation, a tale about how being slow and steady could be the very thing that made all the difference.